People ask us all the time, how can you work with your partner? If I worked with my partner, we would kill each other. And to be honest, it hasn't always been smooth or easy, but I can let you in on a little secret that starting a business with someone that you're dating early on in a relationship really fast forwards the whole getting to know you process.
So our business, Knack Creative, is a photo and video production company. I had been a photographer for well over a decade, and Max had been a videographer for just as long. We were in this space where we were both kind of freelancing, working on different projects, and people would often hire me to photograph, say, an event, and then say, oh, by the way, do you know a videographer? And I would refer Max, or vice versa. So it just made sense for us to combine our services and have a business where we offered both together. And we both had experience being entrepreneurs before, but working with our partner professionally was something new that we both had to learn how to navigate.
Pretty quickly, we realized that we needed less of a work-life balance and more of a work-life integration. So we might be discussing clients while we're folding laundry, or meal planning while we have a break on set at a shoot. It's kind of difficult to separate those two things at this point.
And while photo and video are kind of the two sides of the coin of our business, they're also sort of representative of our personalities. So having been a photographer for as long as I have, when I'm taking pictures, I may have 1/1000th of a second to capture a moment. If I blink and miss it, it's gone. So because of that, I've trained myself to be very planning for the next moment, looking at what's happening next, always thinking ahead. I may be taking a picture over here and with the other eye, like looking at what's over here that I'm gonna have to point my camera at next.
And I see this in Briana's personality too. For example, some days she'll wake up in the morning, she'll open her eyes and she'll be like, so I've been thinking about something. And she'll tell me about how we need to rearrange the furniture in our living room or something like that. And I'm like, when were you thinking about that? You just woke up. Other times, I'll start the day and realize that we have a big house project to work on that apparently we discussed that I forgot about. And she's like, but don't you remember that 15-second conversation we had 6 months ago where we talked about today being the perfect day to paint the living room? And I'm like, no, I'm sorry, I don't remember that. For video, when I'm on shoots, I tend to be a little more loose. So I like to create an environment where the story has the space to reveal itself. So I might change to the other side of the room all of a sudden, or ask for another take, or if an interview is going in a way or direction that is unexpected, I kind of follow it and see where it goes. I tend to focus on the big picture and less on the kind of minute details.
And I definitely see this in Max's personality day to day too. I can always trust him to have the big picture in mind, even if sometimes some of those little details don't get quite as much attention. And usually it's fine, just going with the flow, even if for an over planner like myself, it can be a little stressful. But usually it works to just go with the flow, except the times that it doesn't, it really doesn't. So for one example, I had happened to mention to Max that I would like to go to a Flyers basketball game. I went to UD and somehow had never gone to one and just thought that sounded like fun. So months later, he surprised me with tickets, which was so sweet. And then the day approached, and the hour before the game, and the half hour before the game, and it became very apparent that he hadn't really considered the logistics of the difficult traffic getting into the game, or where we were going to park, leading to him having to drop me off to enjoy the first half hour or so of our date by myself, while he left to figure out all those logistics after the fact.
I'm in agreement that was not my finest moment. Pretty quickly in the business, as we were getting more busy, we realized that I couldn't just do video and she couldn't just do photography. We kind of had to merge and do a little bit of both, which sounds like it should be pretty straightforward. I mean, we use the same cameras, we use the same lenses, we both have an eye for lighting and composition. But we realized fairly quickly that there were some issues when we kind of learned each other's field.
Yeah, so the first time Max went to photograph an event by himself, I was honestly very nervous. I had always, been my own boss and accountable to anyone. So handing over the reins for him to do a photo project alone was very stressful for me. But he was going to cover an event that was a housing tour, so lots of diverse groups of people going through all these different locations. And I was, of course, checking in way too often over text, making sure everything's okay. He assures me, yeah, everything's fine. So when we get back to the office and I load the pictures into the computer, there were maybe 30. And just as a comparison, for a couple-hour event, I might take 200 or 300 photos of something like this, trying to capture every single moment. The ones that were there were beautiful, but even some of those 30 were kind of repetitive, and I could see that he found a beautiful scene, a beautiful beam of light, and set up the camera and just sort of waited for something to happen and got those shots. Whereas I would have been frantically running from place to place trying to document all these things. So I had to look at him and say, babe, the ones you got are great, but next time I really need you to do better.
Around the same time, we had a video project where we needed to get a bunch of footage of a building that was being renovated, and I was unavailable, so it was on Briana to get that footage. And she did, and she went, and she shot it. And then as I was putting the footage together and looking at all the clips, there were dozens of them, and I was like, great, there's a bunch of footage, I have plenty to work with. But then as I started to go through each individual clip, I realized that they were maybe a second long, if not shorter. And I could tell that she would press record, and she would set up the shot, and it looked great, but then she would immediately cut and move on to the next shot. So I had a whole bunch of footage that I couldn't really use because it wasn't long enough. And I had to look at Briana and say, I love you very much, but next time I need you to do better.
So neither one of us really liked having to hear that from each other, and we realized pretty quickly we needed to figure this out. So we called an emergency all-staff happy hour meeting, which was the two of us, just to get everything on the table. And we had a bit of a revelation. While most of the time we're pretty 50-50 in our life and our business, and we like it that way, there would be times where one of us would kind of have to be the employee and the other one would have to take the reins. We would have to learn how to be each other's bosses. Sometimes I would have to know that Max is going to be my boss.
And let's just be real, most of the time she's my boss.
So learning to hear this criticism from each other, like I said, wasn't easy, but we realized we had to really just hear it and take it in. When one of us said, I need you to do better, we couldn't get defensive or justify or shift blame. We had to just hear it. To be honest, we didn't really have the luxury. When being able to buy groceries or pay the mortgage depends on working together, we don't have any time to let things fester and not deal with them.
Hi, Briana. Remember when we were planning this and then you're making sure that we had everything laid out right? And I just was like, it'll be fine. I'm realizing right now in this moment that I don't know where I'm supposed to go next.
So we realized with the differences in our personalities that it really made a lot of sense if we each took the reins in different areas. Max, being more go with the flow.
And Briana being 10 steps ahead.
We had to just kind of divide and conquer these different parts of our life.
So Briana is the boss of making lists of household chores and to-dos.
And Max is our executive chef, who can spend the entire afternoon in a kitchen making an amazing meal with no plan or recipe at all.
Briana is the CFO who budgets and plans for days off months in advance.
And Max is our director of morale, who one day last year when I was nearing a panic attack from stress, called an emergency day off, took me to scene 75, and we spent the entire day playing laser tag and skee ball.
Briana is the boss of thinking about the next shot.
And Max is the boss of going with the flow.